Welcome to the 100th and some Whole Health Forum hosted by Zoom, preparing a Zoom meeting. Got to be more difficult this month than usual. Sorry about that. If anybody is wondering where the link is and they email me or Ganat, hopefully the email was sent out just now to give the correct link to this Zoom session, which will be recorded, which is being recorded and will be available within a week after. Russell Mariani is our guest this afternoon, this morning, this evening, wherever you are. And Russell and I have known each other since sometime in the late 1970s. And Russell, as I was the publisher of East West Journal at one time, contributed articles, or at least one article. But since then, he and I had lost touch, two articles, and reconnected about a year or so ago. And he has been working, teaching, healing, studying, researching, playing with ways of improving human health, human well-being, humans' well-being, and maybe animals also. And has grown a family, has seen thousands of people, and has some interesting, illuminating insights to share with us with his discoveries about some catalysts or adjuncts or complements to what we all had been thinking we were following a wholesome, whole macrobiotic approach to life. We are open, flexible, and Russell Mariani has discovered some of those additional elements that can really add to your well-being, your vitality, and overall health. Thanks, Russell, for taking the time and for sharing your experiences and insights.
Thank you for having me.
You like to say as an introduction to what you're doing and what you've been doing and how you approach health and life well-being.
Okay, you're gonna hand me the microphone.
I think you've got it. Yeah.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for the reconnection. It's really great to be reconnected with you, Lenny. And so for those of you who have never met me before, I am a graduate of the Kushi Institute. Actually, the first class, 1979, that's where I met Lenny. He was the editor of the East West Journal, and he was one of the teachers at the Kushi Institute. So I owe a lot. I am very grateful to my macrobiotic background and education, and it still serves as a foundation for everything that I do. And I guess I would simply say that in my own practice of macrobiotics, I had come into the world of natural healing because I had a medically incurable inflammatory bowel condition called ulcerative colitis, which I had been diagnosed with when I was 18 years old, back in 1973. And was told at the time that it had absolutely nothing to do with my diet. I'd have to be on medication every day for the rest of my life and possibly require surgery, at some point down the road. So, Lenny, there's a lot of background noise coming from somebody's. I guess we should mute everybody.
Yeah, everybody should mute. Everybody should mute themselves. Everybody should mute themselves so that we don't have any background noise. Yeah, sorry.
There we go. Much better. Thank you so much. So yeah, so I had this interesting experience, and the medical doctors at the time were telling me that my condition had nothing to do with my diet. They didn't really know what caused inflammatory bowel conditions, but diet wasn't one of the factors, and I shouldn't self-diagnose, and I should just do what the doctors were telling me to do. Now, the doctors didn't know at the time, even though I kept telling them that I had been on this crazy high protein diet for about a year prior to this diagnosis. One of my high school coaches had come up to me and said, "Here, follow this diet. It'll make you a better athlete." So, of course, knowing nothing at that time in my life about nutrition and health and diets, I had never really followed any diet. I just, had Wheaties for breakfast, sandwiches for lunch, and whatever mom made for dinner. Standard American diet. So, but when I received this diagnosis and this kind of grim future of medications only and possible surgery, I kept insisting that there had to be something related to my diet, because I had been on this crazy high protein diet where if I had eaten any fiber-rich grains and vegetables for the previous year, it was totally by accident and not by design. So I went off on my own, and back in 1973, there really weren't a lot of, there wasn't a lot going on in the world of holistic health, or at least it certainly hadn't penetrated mainstream or even close to mainstream. So on my own, I made some dietary changes. I read some books. I added more fiber. I just kind of ate a more sensible diet, and I improved dramatically. I didn't get 100% healthy, but I improved dramatically. And then when I was at university, I went to Rutgers University, which is the State University of New Jersey. Close to my senior year, I met a young woman in one of my classes who had healed herself through macrobiotics. She had had some type of cancer. And so I became friends with her, and she was the one. Her name is Lisa. She introduced me to macrobiotic cooking, introduced me to the work of Michio Kushi, introduced me to the East-West Journal, showed me how to cook brown rice. And so through Lisa, I got pretty close to 100% healthy at that time. And yet the kind of like the psychological impact of being given this terrible diagnosis and prognosis, the more I read, especially Michio's first book, Macrobiotics, I wanted to come to Boston. I wanted to attend the Kushi Institute. So in the summer of 1978, I went to Amherst, Massachusetts, for a macrobiotic conference, and then met many people there, got a job at Erewhon, moved to Boston, lived in a study house, and attended classes at the Kushi Institute. And then in 1980, I joined a small group of friends in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. We ran a macrobiotic restaurant called the Balancing Point Cafe. If anybody remembers Will Berliner, he was the leader of that group, and actually John Kaczynski, who I know is still teaches macrobiotics at the Kushi Institute. He was a good friend back then as well, part of our core team. And so that's how I started my career. In 1980, I was a founding member of the American Shiatsu Association. Shizuko Yamamoto was my teacher. And so the first 10 years of my practice, I mostly did shiatsu. But of course, every person that I saw needed information about dietary changes. So I was always teaching people about macrobiotic diet, improved diet, certain principles. And then by 1990, I had transitioned to working full-time as a health educator, nutrition counselor, but I was becoming increasingly frustrated with using what I saw as an exclusively macrobiotic approach. Most of the people I was working with were mainstream American people. They weren't necessarily interested in esoteric philosophies or yin and yang or even the energetics of things. And so out of frustration, I simply started to create an approach, create a explanation for health and healing, nutritional health and healing, that did not include at least the language of macrobiotics, yin and yang, and 5 elements. And slowly but surely, probably by the mid-90s, certainly by the late 90s, I had a very simple system that I had put together, a way of explaining what health is. And then I read a book about functional medicine back in 1999. And that was the first time I came across this term, functional medicine, functional nutrition. And I had one of those aha moments when I realized that's it in a nutshell. I mean, all I'm trying to do in working with other people is, yes, restore their health and help them get to that point where they feel, optimally healthy. But the path to get there is literally by restoring function to the organs and systems and cells of the body. When everything is functioning normally, then there are no negative symptoms. So it's kind of a brief summary of.
So were you teaching this whole time?
I got to where I am today. Sorry.
Were you teaching this whole time? You were learning, you were healing yourself, and you were sharing your discoveries, and had people coming to you for health advice?
Yes, basically since 1980, people were coming to me for health advice. Yes. In the 80s, I was doing mostly shiatsu and nutritional counseling on the side, but by 1990, I was kind of full-time. I mean, not full-time income. I still had part-time work, but by the mid-90s, I was full-time as a practitioner. Yes.
And so you were using these principles that you said you didn't feel, you thought they were too complex or esoteric for your students or clients, but they were, how do they inform what you were doing and how you were advising people?
Yeah, great question. So basically, what I came to in my American understanding of health and healing was that there are principles based on physiology, based on biology, and there are practices that come out of those principles. And that's what I always understood macrobiotics to be. So in my Americanization of this approach, I basically understood that the first principle is that the body is constantly healing itself. The body is constantly trying to restore function and then maintain function and maintain health. The problem is that the individual person, doesn't know how to cooperate with those self-healing mechanisms, those self-healing capabilities. And, the medical term for that first principle is homeostasis. So that's a very common understanding. And then the second principle, which definitely comes from macrobiotics, is nothing is neutral. There's nothing that we eat. There's nothing that we drink. There's nothing that we take as supplements. There's nothing that we take as medicine, sleep, rest, exercise, all of these things, the most obvious things that impact our physiology, not one of those influences or impacts has a neutral impact. Everything is either helpful or harmful. Everything is either complementary to homeostasis, complementary to the body's desire and ability to restore function, or it's actively insulting, it's actively blocking, it's actively preventing that person's body from restoring health. So, and food, so in the process of learning this and explaining this, over time, I came to recognize 7 distinct and interconnected root cause areas. And the selection and preparation of food is simply one of those 7 root cause areas. Now, it's a very important one But I've come to understand that each of these 7 areas are equally important. So why not just mention what they are, and then you can ask me questions about them, or we can, go into detail or about
You
any
don't
of
have
them.
any slide presentation that people could see that, or do you, or?
No,
It's
I
okay.
don't. I didn't prepare any slides.
That's okay.
We can put in the chat a link
Yeah.
where people can download my book in ebook format, in a simple PDF format. So I wrote a book in 2006 called Healing Digestive Illness. And then I wrote a second edition to that book in 2015. And then we changed the title in 2020. We changed the title to Principle Eating, Principle with an L-E, the No Diet Way to Complete Health. So this book will comprehensively explain, everything that I'm summarizing today. And it's free. It's free in ebook format. You can get it directly through my website, and the website is russellmariani.com.
And we'll put that in the chat, or if somebody else can put it in the chat, as well as how to reach Russell through his website.
Yeah, thank you. So
the 7 principles, you're gonna share them with us.
Yes, the 7
root causes.
Root cause areas. And then, so there's 7 root cause areas, and then I lead people through a process where we identify the complementary or insulting habits in their diet, in their lifestyle. And so typically, in the process of getting better, people need to make changes in one, or people need to make changes in each of these areas, but usually just 1 or 2 changes. So, okay, so root cause area number 1 is mindfulness. It includes everything that you already think about and believe about mindfulness. The way I define mindfulness is knowing the difference between the complementary and insulting habits in your diet and lifestyle, and consciously choosing, proactively choosing to practice the complementary habits and minimize, or if necessary, avoid completely the insulting habits until your body gets better. Root cause area number 2 is...
What are those indicators? Could you just say how would you experience each of those qualities?
How to decide what's complementary and what's insulting? Yeah, so I think I always walk people through a simple exercise at the beginning of their program, because most people know the most obvious insulting habits they participate in. Maybe they don't get enough sleep and rest. Maybe they eat too many snacks. Maybe they eat too late at night. Maybe they don't chew their food properly. Maybe they drink too much alcohol. Maybe they drink too much coffee. Maybe they don't drink enough water. So there's a whole lot of things that most people are aware that if they really wanted to take their health seriously, they could start with these 2 or 3 or 4, most basic things. So one of the helpful things in determining, what's complementary and insulting is, again, this notion of homeostasis. And in functional medicine, they use the term biomodulation. So everything is a biomodulator. Everything affects the functioning of our organs and systems and cells. And so another way of thinking about complementary influences, or complementary foods, complementary habits, complementary beverages, complementary supplements, is they biomodulate the body.
No.
They help restore normal functioning.
No.
Please, anybody who's not unmuted, please, please mute your microphone.
Either that or share the joke with us, please.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, most people have a clear sense some of the most obvious insults that they're engaging in, and some of the most obvious complementary habits they engage in. So that's the starting point for everybody. But of course, if everybody, if it was as simple as just making changes based on their current level of knowledge, I think most people would be able to turn things around pretty quickly. But most people are not aware of the significance of the other 6 root cause areas. And so they're usually very specific changes I can help them make in those other 6 areas. For example, root cause area number 2, proper daily hydration. There isn't any health-conscious person on planet Earth that doesn't recognize that hydration is an essential health habit, but that doesn't mean that they're properly hydrated. I have known, or I knew about the importance of pure water. I always went out of my way to get spring water, usually from a natural spring, you know, well into the 80s, until I finally broke down and bought a point-of-use water purifier for my tap water to make sure that that water was purified, not distilled. The minerals were still intact, but, you know, contaminants were removed. But that did not mean that I was properly hydrated. And in my own life, in my own health history, I suffered from some level of chronic fatigue, but I suffered from periodic bouts of depression and anxiety, like panic attacks. And they weren't circumstantial. It wasn't based on what was going on in my life, because I could be feeling fantastic, and then all of a sudden I could feel anxious, and I could never figure out what was driving those negative experiences. And then one day back in 1997, somebody, during one of my seminars, I did a seminar in about 125 cities in the US between 1994 and 1998, called Building Bridges to Better Health. And at one of the breaks, a young man came out of the audience and handed me a book that changed my life. And that book, some of you have come across, maybe not, called Your Body's Many Cries for Water. And it was written by a medical doctor, F. Batman Gelage. And I read that book cover to cover on the flight home, called the publisher Monday morning and said, I really want to talk to Dr. B. And that conversation changed my life, because he taught me to drink half my body weight in ounces of water per day. And
Does that mean pounds or kilograms?
Pounds.
So if you're 150 pounds, 75 ounces of water?
Exactly, exactly.
Whew.
So at the time, I weighed 200 pounds, and he told me that I needed to drink 100 ounces of water a day, which was about 80% more than I had ever consumed in my entire life up until that time. But I was desperate. I was not feeling well. I was in one of these periods of depression. So he has a very specific methodology for drinking water. You drink a certain amount before breakfast, and then a certain amount between breakfast and lunch, a certain amount in the afternoon. Sorry, did you have a question? So long and short of that story is I implemented the water cure as defined by Dr. B. And on day 14, again, I had been suffering from this clinical depression. On day 14, I woke up, I was still feeling terrible. But at lunchtime, I went in to prepare my 3rd quart of water, and I just used an old milk bottle, a quart-sized milk bottle for my drinking water. And while I was getting that ready, the depression lifted. And from that moment in March of 1997 until today, I've never had another panic attack and never had another moment of depression. And I've had all kinds of ups and downs in my life circumstances. So I recognized that my body was unintentionally, but chronically underhydrated. And so this was a big revelation for me, and I've incorporated that habit, that practice into my diet, into my lifestyle. And it's something that I find.
Sorry.
It's something that I find, again, most people are aware of. They know they need to be hydrated. But even among people who drink a lot of water, they're often 15 or 20 ounces or more under that kind of ideal goal of half your body weight in ounces. Now, I am not one for prescriptions, and so I tell everybody to experiment. It works for me to drink half my body weight in ounces, and on a very hot day or a humid day, I might drink even more than that. But I have
So this
found
idea, the macrobiotic idea about limiting the number of times we urinate during the day and not looking at our kidney as a hollow tube. What's your sense about that?
So I followed that rule or that principle that I learned in macrobiotics. I was always concerned about weakening my kidneys by drinking too much water. Now, the other thing that happened that I didn't share was in 1994, I had a kidney stone that I had to go to the hospital for. In 1995, I had a kidney stone. In 1996, summer, I had a kidney stone. And I'm certain that I was probably in the process of creating another kidney stone, but in January of 1997, I learned about the water cure, and I've never had another kidney stone since. So Dr. B wrote about 8 books before he died in 2004 on the subject of hydration as a medical therapy. So I am convinced through my own experience, through the experience of many other people, and through all the research that he documented in his books, that this is a major piece of the puzzle. Now, whether or not somebody needs to absolutely drink half their body weight in ounces, I think that's an individual call, but I would encourage everyone to experiment and do that for at least a few months, before they decide what the ideal amount of water is for them. So I would say if you're concerned about weakening your kidneys, what I learned basically through Dr. B is that every cell of the body is mostly water. It's like literally 55 to 75% of the physical structure of every cell, brain cells, kidney cells, even bone cells, which seem totally, hard physical structure, even bone cells are composed of almost 50% water. And so the basic idea is if the cell is not properly hydrated, not only I don't know.
It's
Sorry.
hands.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Since you're not a co-presenter, if I mute everybody, you'll also be muted.
But then I can unmute myself. Yeah,
Let's
you
see if I
should be
can-
able to mute everybody, and then
I can mute
just-
everybody.
Then I can individually unmute myself.
Okay, you're unmuted.
Yeah. Okay. Where were we?
You're
So
still on the water cure and the kidney
Yeah.
stones and
every cell needs to be properly hydrated. Again, this model is based on the health of cells. If your cells are healthy and functioning normally, then you're healthy. Whether it's your heart cells, your kidney cells, your liver cells, lung cells, brain cells, nerve cells, our health completely 100% depends on the health of our individual cells. Cells make up tissue, tissue makes up organs, organs make up systems. So it is the most fundamental building block of the human body. The basic idea is if there's drought at any level, if there's underhydration, then that cell starts dysfunctioning. And it tries to alert us to the condition of unintentional dehydration through a variety of symptoms. And we just have not been taught that those symptoms point to dehydration, as well as they point to micronutrient deficiencies and macronutrient imbalances and imbalances in the gut microflora and sources of oxidative stress and impaired redox signaling. And by the way, those are all the other 6 root cause areas. So basically, by understanding that there are these 7 distinct and interconnected areas, and by learning about each one and making changes as needed in each of these 7 root cause areas, the body heals itself. The body restores function. And then as long as the complementary habits are continued, then there's no reason why the body's going to fall out of homeostasis. The body doesn't develop disease on its own. We have to create the conditions through our ignorance or through our arrogance by not giving the body what it needs, literally by giving the cells what they need so they can restore normal functioning. That's my basic understanding.
One of our participants asks, how often do you have to urinate when you're drinking that much, or how did that work?
Yeah, so great. So actually, when I first learned about the water cure, Dr. B had me measure the amount of water that I drank, 100 ounces, and he had me measure the amount of urine that I produced every day for either 14 or 28 days in a row. And so the amount of water that you drink will be matched ounce by ounce, within a few ounces, by the amount of urine that we produce every day. So if you drink 100 ounces of water, you're going to drink 100 ounces of urine. So, I would say now, one of my complaints in the beginning was, in fact, I said to Dr. B, you don't understand. I already don't sleep at night. I already wake up 3 or 4 times a night to pee. If I drink 100 ounces of water, I'll never sleep. And he laughed and he said, no, you don't understand that your kidneys are dehydrated, and so they don't function properly. And your bladder is dehydrated, and so it's constantly irritated, and it will not hold on to a normal amount of urine. Well, didn't make sense to me, but I was desperate. So I followed the water cure, but that turned out to be true. So most nights, even though I've consumed 100 ounces of water during the day, I only wake up once, and it's close to the time I'm going to wake up anyway. So it does not interfere with my sleeping. During the day, I would say, I don't know, every hour and a half, I probably need to pee. Yeah.
And so the quantity that you were eliminating during this measuring period, you were eliminating as much as you were drinking, or not?
Correct. Plus or minus.
But now?
Plus or
You don't
minus
think so?
10 ounces maybe.
Now you're absorbing more than you're eliminating.
Correct. That's very good, Lenny. So people can relate to this. If you go on vacation and you have somebody take care of all your house plants, you come back and they're all very healthy except one plant. For some reason, they didn't see it, and so it completely dried up. If you try to pour water on that dry soil, the water literally bounces off the soil. So that's also a consideration. When cells are completely dysfunctional and dried out and dehydrated, it takes them a while to get properly hydrated. which is part of the reason for sipping the water. It's like that dried house plant. You would spray water onto the soil. You would spritz water onto the soil. You wouldn't pour it. So it's the same thing. It takes, Dr. B always said it would take anywhere from 14 to 28 days. Once you were doing the water cure correctly, which means half your body weight in ounces, to which you add 1/4 of a teaspoon of sea salt per quart of water. And if that seems like too much, then do less than that. I tell people if 1/4 of a teaspoon is too much, do 1/8 of a teaspoon. Do just a pinch of sea salt per quart of water. The minerals and trace minerals in the sea salt function as electrolytes, which is what allows the water to get absorbed into the cell. So it's a very important piece of the puzzle. And I've met many people over the years who say they drink the right amount of water, but they don't add salt because they feel they get enough salt in other ways in their diet. But when they start adding the salt to the drinking water, it's a big difference. So it does seem to be a critical piece of the recipe, if you will.
Well, some people think that a heavy meat eating, a conventional Western diet, that maybe more water is needed. But when you're eating so much of a plant-based diet, a lot of the food is cooked with or contains so much water that we don't need to drink as much. What is your experience about that?
My experience is that's what I believed. Like, I believed that from 1973 until 1997. That's a macrobiotic staple, that because of how we prepare food and the water in the cooking and the steaming and the water content of the vegetables and the fermented vegetables, I absolutely believed that hook, line, and sinker, and I was wrong. I personally was wrong, and I found that this approach to hydration really worked. Not just worked for me. I mean, it's a transformational habit in my own experience, and it has been for many other people. But again, if I have a core principle when it comes to giving advice to other people, it is that every person is responsible for their own health. Every person is responsible for learning and experimenting and checking things out on their own to see if that diet or that recipe or that approach to hydration or that approach to exercise works best for them. So I would say that. I would encourage you to learn about this, study it, check it out. I have information, of course, about the water cure, but Dr. B, even though he's been gone now 20 years, several people maintain his website, and it's just watercure.com. And there's lots of very interesting information about the therapeutic value of proper hydration on that website.
So this is an area of experimentation rather than, whoop, Russell's still there?
Here, I'm here.
Okay, you just disappeared. You're giving guidelines, not giving absolutes.
Yes,
Suggestions.
in a forum like this, I'm giving general information and encourage people to check it out. Take what I'm saying with a grain of salt, pun intended. But when I work with people one-on-one, I have a program. Probably 75% of my practice is for people suffering from digestive system disorders like colitis and Crohn's disease and celiac disease and colonic inertia and IBS. And I walk people through a process of determining whether or not they want to work with me and whether I want to work with them. And then once there's agreement, it's a 6-month program. And part of that agreement is that they don't know how to completely restore their health, and they need guidance. And so I'm going to guide them through a process. So when people commit to my program, they're committing to at least experimenting with the water cure properly, effectively, and integrating several other things that I've discovered, including, without using the word macrobiotic, I teach people a simple whole foods approach, which in my mind is, a macrobiotic approach to cooking grains and cooking vegetables. And I encourage my clients to take macrobiotic cooking classes, to find macrobiotic teachers in their area. I encourage all of my clients to attend Virginia Harper's online cooking classes. Ginny is a good friend of mine, and she's a great colleague. She healed herself from Crohn's disease back in the 80s, early 90s, and so she's someone that I collaborate with often. So yeah, so when people work with me one-on-one, I pretty much insist that they follow the bouncing ball of my recommendations. And of course, we make adjustments along the way, but the basic assumption is they need a guide to guide them through the wilderness, because they keep trying to get to the other side of that wilderness, but they have not yet been successful. So
could you repeat those 6 or 7 root causes of health or illness?
Root cause area number 1, mindfulness. Root cause area number 2, proper daily hydration. Root cause area number 3, micronutrient deficiencies, vitamins, minerals, trace minerals, amino acids, essential fatty acids, pigments like chlorophyll. Root cause area number 4, macronutrient imbalances. And so root cause area number 4 is, well, what do I eat for breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks? How do I select those foods? How do I prepare those foods? Root cause area number 5 is intestinal dysbiosis. It's the world of the intestinal microbiome, that ecosystem of hundreds of trillions, thousands of trillions of organisms that live inside the gut. And when the gut is healthy, typically the rest of the body is going to be healthy or much healthier. But if that intestinal microbiome is out of balance, if there is an overgrowth of pathological organisms, then that person is going to have great difficulty in regaining their health. And so I have a whole protocol using very specialized herbs to get rid of the bad organisms and replant, if you will, a healthy garden of bacteria, so that intestinal microbiome is very healthy. In fact, I would say that of all the things that I do with people, this transformation of the intestinal microbiome may be the most significant, and it may be the thing that separates me from many other practitioners, because it doesn't happen overnight. It can take 2 or 3 months of a day-to-day process of again, getting rid of the bad organisms and growing the much healthier new microbiome.
So you don't feel that eating fiber-rich food, plants, grains, and so forth, and fruits, and also eating fermented food, that's sufficient?
So it's interesting. It's a very good question, Lenny. For some people, it's enough. But for a lot of people, and I think a growing number of people, because of all the other factors that impair our health, the microbiome, when a person has serious dysbiosis, those organisms don't want to leave. They have found a home in your body. And even though you've changed your diet, even though you're taking probiotics, even though you're eating kimchi and sauerkraut and fermented vegetables and doing many other things for the health of your microbiome, it doesn't always respond. Or let me put it this way, it always responds. It doesn't always improve. because the ideal balance of organisms is 80% or more probiotic. And so again, I have found that this is a limiting factor for a lot of people, and it's a core component of my program, and it's often the very thing that people haven't come across yet, that once they finally go through that piece of the puzzle, it really makes a significant difference in the rest, in their gut health, of course, but in the health of the rest of their body. They sleep better, they have better energy, their skin clears up, their hair grows back, you know, et cetera, et cetera.
So what are the self-diagnostics to understand whether or not we do have a healthy biome, or whether we do need to follow a recommendation like your special herbs?
Yeah, great. So I think, you know, the first criteria would be your level of health is not where you want it to be, in spite of all kinds of investments of time, energy, resources, supplements, that you've tried a whole bunch of things, and your overall health is still not where you want it to be, even though you may not have a particular digestive system disorder. Things haven't advanced to the point where you've had a diagnosis of a specific digestive system disorder, but you just can't get to 100% healthy, or however you define that. Okay, but certainly if you have gas, bloating, cramping, abdominal discomfort, constipation, loose urge and frequent bowel movements, you know, if you have all the telltale signs of digestive distress, then chances are extremely high that you're suffering from intestinal dysbiosis. So root cause area number 6, oxidative stress. Root cause area number 7, something called redox signaling, which is a fairly new science, fairly new biological science, the science of redox signaling. So those are the 7 areas.
Can you tell us about redox?
Yes, be very happy to. So again, Cliff Note version. Redox signaling molecules were first discovered by scientists in 1997. In 1998, those 3 scientists won the Nobel Prize for Medicine and Physiology. Basically, redox signaling molecules are manufactured in the mitochondria of every healthy cell of our body. The mitochondria are the energy factories of our cells, and energy is produced through the utilization and activation of these redox signaling molecules. So they're the smallest molecules ever discovered that perform meaningful activity inside the cellular dance, inside the, you know, cellular metabolic activity. Most redox molecules are only 2 or 3 or 4 atoms in size. So this is redox signaling is a creature of nanotechnology. And so the scientists, once they realized what these redox signaling molecules were, they are signaling molecules. So the simplest analogy is most of us have a cell phone and lots of us have an iPhone. And in order for the cell phone to work properly, in order for me to access all the amazing capabilities of this miraculous little machine, I have to have 5 bars of signal strength. And if I have 5 bars of signal strength, I can access everything that this little thing is capable of doing. But if I only have 3 bars of signal strength, I may not be able to download any videos. If I only have 2 bars of signal strength, I may not be able to make a phone call, you know, across town. And so the same thing happens inside of our body. Every cell has something called redox potential. So these are messenger molecules. These are signaling molecules. Scientists basically have discovered that nothing happens inside of our cells without the assistance of these redox signaling molecules. Redox signaling molecules turn on the genetic messages for normal functioning. They detect damage inside the cell and then signal for the repair code. And so through the utilization of these redox signaling molecules, problems are detected at the cellular level, problems are repaired at the cellular level. So the redox signaling molecules turn on the signals for health and they turn off the genetic codes inside the cell that allow for dysfunction, degeneration, and eventually disease. So if you can imagine, if you've literally tried everything else, including restoring your gut health, and you're still not healthy, chances are good that you have a redox signaling deficiency, redox signaling molecule deficiency. And so back in
Is there some
around,
test you can do? Is it just subjective? Is there any objective test?
that's also a great question. As far as I know, there is no technology that's been created to tell us, that we have a specific redox deficiency and therefore we need certain number of ounces of redox supplement. So back in 2010, a team of scientists figured out how to create bioactive redox signaling molecules that not only look the same as the ones made in our own cells, made in our own mitochondria, but perform in the very same way. So they're totally safe. There's no toxicity. They're not plant-based supplements. They're literally made from pure water and pure salt, the same substances that our cells use to produce the redox signaling molecules inside our mitochondria. So there's a watery substance inside of our cells called cytosol. And that substance is what the cells use, the mitochondria use to produce the redox signaling molecule. So it's a very amazing, very interesting science, biotechnology. And so this is as a supplement, it's a biotech supplement. It's a bioreplenishment for the redox signaling potential. And so everyone is encouraged to try a small amount and then experiment. Some people find that all they need is 4 ounces a day, and they experience a significant, if not many times a profound improvement in in everything, because redox molecules are involved with every type of cellular activity.
Is that the only source that you could recommend? Ever since we've talked about this, I've been trying to get it, and it apparently is out of stock. I don't know if there's somebody else that makes a similar supplement. And it's basically water and salt, is what you're saying, but it's broken down to its simplest atom forms.
Yeah, it's made from purified, so it's made from pure H2O and pure sodium chloride, 4 elements, 4 atoms. Those atoms are broken down through a highly patented electrochemical process into their subatomic particles and reconfigured, and that's beyond my pay grade. I understand that much. And that was the breakthrough, was to stabilize these molecules. So as far as I know, only one company in the world had figured out how to do this. And even after 15 years, no one else has come along and created another type of redox signaling supplement. But if you're interested in learning more about it or making a purchase, I can show you how to do that. So no problem there. And the company is doing well, and they haven't run out or anything like that. So it's simply, it's one of the things I recommend for people. I don't recommend a lot of supplements. I have a few core nutritional supplements, a superfood, a digestive enzyme, a probiotic, and the redox supplement. That's basically it. Alongside hydration and chewing whole foods and macrobiotic foods, as I said earlier, I believe and embrace the macrobiotic approach to selecting food and preparing food and cooking food and chewing food, and based on seasons, based on all kinds of other factors. I think it's still the best approach to eating.
But you've obviously added a number of additions that were not part of the original macrobiotic teaching. And so I know that there are some people very conservative that don't want to make those kind of changes. And yet there are some other people who feel like it's completely throw out the baby and the bathwater because it just doesn't work. So you're actually embracing, it seems like, the core, but adding additional complementary aspects to it that you're suggesting that people try out, even though it's not an absolute.
Yes.
Unless you've got very sick clients coming to you.
Well, again, when people come to me, I go through a process of explanation, and when people say, yes, okay, that approach makes sense to me and I want to follow it, then I guide them through. And of course, I mean, if they don't want to do something, they don't have to do it, obviously, but then they're not going to end up going through my program. So what I say to everybody is, if you have found an approach that works for you, then obviously keep doing it. And so, but if you're struggling, then, you know, you might want to consider that there are things that you could learn about that could prove to be very helpful in your quest for optimal health and well-being. So, I mean, that's how I put it. I feel that the ultimate goal in macrobiotics is personal freedom. And I don't know anybody who experiences true personal freedom without being really healthy. So to me, physical health is the foundation. And unless and until we've recovered or restored a very high degree of our physical health, we're not going to get as close as we need to or want to that ultimate goal of personal freedom. That's
it seems also like your first principle about mindfulness, sensitivity, understanding how different environmental and dietary factors affect our well-being, that's a core part of this, because a lot of people just don't have that sensitivity. And they're so accustomed to taking drugs or herbs to supplement, they don't know what's going on without some guidance.
You know where this road, what road's gonna intersect with this road, or where?
Whoa, I thought we were all muted. Anyhow, so it seems like this mindfulness is a core first step.
Oh, where do you think this goes?
This could take you into the town of New Paltz.
Oh,
Whew.
Mute myself. Okay, so there we go. So again, mindfulness to me is the first root cause area. Now, obviously, it's a principle as well. And I agree with you. I think it's probably the most important thing. I mean, self-awareness is the most important thing. And as I said earlier, the purpose of my work, and I always felt that this was the purpose of macrobiotics. We were friends to each other. We were teachers for each other. But the point, my goal with each person I work with is to make them independent of me as soon as possible without rushing. And the way to make them independent is to teach them these principles and then encourage them to experiment with changes in each of these 7 root cause areas. So, but as I said earlier, mindfulness to me means being proactive and taking on the responsibility of determining what is a complementary habit for me. may not be a complementary habit for somebody else. What are the most important insulting habits that I need to avoid? And what are the most complementary habits I need to practice every day? And then make a conscious and willful decision to practice the complementary habits and avoid the insulting habits. And to the degree I'm willing to be committed to that process, all the other good things I want in my life will follow or not follow. So yes, mindfulness is very important.
So you also, in terms of somebody's improvement, you have a concept about the 3 phases of health, or if you don't mind going into that, or unless you had some other area
No,
that you
no,
want to
that-
focus on.
No, that's fine. Yeah, so again, most of the people that I end up working with are, seriously challenged. They've tried many things and it just hasn't worked. And so phase 1, what I refer to as phase 1 is the period of time it takes to learn all these new principles, learn all these new practices, and practice them long enough until they've had a breakthrough in their health. So they're clearly out of the funk, they're out of the dis-ease, they're out of feeling terrible all the time, and they're starting to feel better. And not in a minor way, but in a significant way, in a consistent way. They now know that every day they're getting better and better. And that's what I call phase 2. So once they're out of that misery of phase 1, and they know that what they've learned and what they're doing is actually making a significant impact on their physiology, on their health. They know this. They look in the mirror, they're experiencing improvement. So that's what I call phase 2. And then phase 2 can last for several weeks or several months or several years. And I think phase 2 really depends on a person's level of desire and level of commitment. How much do I really want to be healthy? What are the things on my bucket list that I have not done yet? And in order to do them, I need to be healthy. And so I'm going to be really serious about this. And so phase 3 is what I consider, the ultimate goal, personal freedom, dietary freedom. So in the context of digestive wellness, for me, phase 3 is having recovered a degree of digestive wellness so that I can, or you can, have the freedom to eat whatever you want to eat, whenever you want to eat it, and not suffer any major negative consequences. Again, depending on what that indulgence is, you can escape minor consequences, but I'm talking about, major consequences. So in other words, because of all the work that you've done in reclaiming or regaining a significant degree of digestive wellness, the reward for all that work should be some wiggle room. So in other words, whatever your favorite indulgence is, you want to be able to have that indulgence here and there without any major negative consequence. That's how I would describe it.
And you've, in dealing with hundreds, thousands, however many clients you've had, have you seen people evolve through these 3 phases successfully?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I would say hundreds. It could be near 1,000 at this point. I've been working with people since 1980. So, but yeah, I mean, basically, I would say that my success rate is over 90%, because again, I go through a very elaborate process before somebody says yes, before they say yes to me, and I say yes to them. And so there's usually going to be a high degree of cooperation from the people who participate in my program. So that is the ultimate determining factor. If people cooperate fully, then they're going to succeed. They're going to improve. They're going to experience the results that they're looking for. But some people don't. You know, people are people. Nobody gets 100% results. So, but it's pretty significant. I mean, it is, and I basically work with people until they get better. Again, unless it's clear to me that they're actually not doing what they're telling me they're doing, but that's extremely rare in my experience.
And somebody asked, with the herbs and other supplements that you're recommending, whether it's sort of a multi-level marketing or somehow you're an affiliate, and whether there's, you know, I don't know if it's a cynical question or just a practical one, is how distinct are you from the costs for these supplements that are being recommended?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I don't mind answering it at all. So for me, the priority is and has always been safety and efficacy of whatever we're talking about. You know, I was talking to Lenny the other day in preparation for today, and I discovered a new source for sea salt, and I can't wait to try it. So I'm always looking for the best products, the best foods, the best sources for foods, the best sources for rice, the best sources for pasta, the best sources for vegetables. You know, Megan and I, my wife, Megan and I have belonged to a CSA, community supported agriculture, for our local produce since the early 1980s, I think 1982. So the truth is that some supplements have come into the marketplace through the vehicle of word of mouth marketing or network marketing or multi-level marketing. And I don't care, because my primary interest is the quality of the product and the results that I get and the results that people get, you know, that I have introduced. If they don't like that model, then they don't have to make those purchases. So I have been involved with one company that chose network marketing back in the early 1980s. I have been associated with that company since 1987. And I do receive a small commission when people make that purchase. The Redox Signaling Company is a word of mouth network marketing company, so I receive a small commission when people make that purchase. But again, my integrity is a very important principle in my life, and so my goal is to help people get better. Once they're better, they're on their own. I mean, they could stay in touch with me, but I want people to make choices, including their supplement choices, that they feel good about. So if somebody doesn't want to order through a network marketing company, no problem.
I think that answers the question. Great.
Hope so.
And another question, just while we're taking questions, people are in the chat at least seemingly surprised by the quantity of water that this book and that you have discovered, you know, to take and that you're recommending. And somebody said, you know, there's been a macrobiotic theory, like only drink when you're thirsty. And,
Right.
you know, that however we discover thirst. When it's a rainy day, you know, we don't feel as thirsty. When we're sitting around reading, we don't get as thirsty. So is it mainly with the addition of, isn't it specifically sodium chloride salt or other minerals that you add, like electrolytes, or what, you know, anyhow?
So
give us a little more about the water.
Yeah, so two very important distinctions. The first distinction is commercial table salt is toxic to the body. And probably most of you watching and listening today already know that. So organic quality or close to organic quality sea salt has many minerals and trace minerals, depending on the brand, upwards of 40, 44, 46 minerals and trace minerals. The trace minerals function as electrolytes, allowing the water molecules to be absorbed. Okay, so that's the first distinction. The second distinction, and I hope everybody hears this loud and clear, I am not recommending that you drink a certain amount of water. I'm recommending that you learn about the possibility of what we affectionately refer to as the water cure, which is based on the research of this medical doctor, and now, of course, many other medical doctors. And there seems to be consensus around this notion of half our body weight in ounces of water. But I do not tell people what to do unless you're my client. If you're my client, then we'll have conversations. And when you're in agreement to do something, then I'll encourage you to go forward. But I don't encourage anyone to do anything if they're confused about it or if they object to it. So again, it's a really important consideration. I was shocked when I was first learning about this. And another important distinction is if you wait until you're thirsty before you start drinking water, you're already seriously underhydrated. Thirst is a sign of dehydration. So I would encourage everyone to get Dr. B's book. It's not that thick. You can read it in a couple of sittings. Your Body's Many Cries for Water is the title of the book. The subtitle is You're Not Sick, You're Thirsty. So that's interesting.
Yeah, and just as a add-on to that comment, Jane Stankich, who's on the forum today and has been involved in macrobiotic counseling with her former husband Lino for many, many years, concurs with the fact that if we only drink when we're thirsty, we're probably underhydrated.
Thank you, Jane. I don't remember ever meeting Jane, but I want you to know that your husband Lino, and I know he's passed, rest in peace, is one of my heroes. When I was at the Kushi Institute, I met Lino. He was a guest lecturer, and he told this amazing story of himself in a concentration camp along with some of his relatives. And he said, or he shared, that one of the reasons that this group of relatives and him survived because they chewed every morsel of bread that they had. They only had little bits of bread, and they were able to survive because they chewed and chewed and chewed. And of course, we now know scientifically that through chewing, the body generates enzymes, digestive enzymes. And those enzymes are literally sparks of energy, sparks of life. And he believed that that's what kept them alive. I tell that story all the time, Jane. So thank you for being here. Thanks for chiming in on the water.
And another thing about thirst is that I know that if we do wait until we're thirsty, and if we get a lot thirsty, it could be a symptom of diabetes, and that an unquenchable thirst is connected to diabetes. And so you don't really know, but unless you're drinking enough, that if you wait until you're thirsty, you may have other symptoms and other issues.
Correct. 100% correct. I don't know. I've always had this question about traditional people, how much water traditional people consumed, and this notion of drinking half our body weight definitely came through a scientific analysis. So of course that didn't exist 200 years ago. So to me, it's one of those unanswered questions and possibly unanswerable questions. All I can tell you is that based on everything I've read, based on everything I've learned, based on everything I've experimented with, this notion of half our body weight in ounces of water every day with a little sea salt added to the water is something worth learning about. And if you decide not to do it, God bless you, that's fine. If it's something that makes sense to you, or even if it's something that you're willing to experiment with, it could change your life. It changed my life. It was as profound a change in my physiology as macrobiotic diet was in my life. And I'm forever grateful to Dr. B. He spent a lot of time with me on the phone those first few months of learning about the water cure, and I'm forever grateful to his life and to his work and to his research.
And the book, The Water Cure, it's available on Amazon, is that?
The title of the book is actually Your Body's Many Cries for Water. So if you go to his website, which is watercure.com, his book is prominently displayed there. And
Watercure.com.
watercure.com. And before he died, he either wrote 8 or 10 books. And actually, the book that turned out to be his last book was called, the title of the book was Cancer, Obesity, and Depression. And I believe it was published just a few months before he died in the year 2004. And coincidentally, or, whatever, I had written Dr. B a letter back in 1997, thanking him for introducing me to the water cure. But he never wrote me back, and I figured that's okay. He probably gets thousands of letters. But about 3 months before the publication of his last book, and about 6 months before he died, he called me out of the blue, and he said he had recently moved his office, and my letter had fallen behind his desk from 1997. So he was reading it for the first time in 2004, and he wanted to know if he could include my letter in what turned out to be his last book. And so I'm very proud that the letter that I wrote to him, basically thanking him for introducing me to the water cure, appears in what turned out to be the last book that he was able to publish. And so many people have read that letter that I wrote to him and then contacted me, because my contact information is in the letterhead of that letter.
How, what his cause of death was?
Pneumonia.
Uh-huh.
Pneumonia. And again, I don't believe that Dr. B was very healthy, especially the last 10 or 15 years of his life. He was a classically trained allopathic medical doctor. I believe he went to the University Medical School in London. He grew up in Tehran, in Iran. After medical school, he went back to Tehran. His practice was in Tehran. I really don't know how. I know myself and many other people were always encouraging him to improve his diet, to lose a little weight, et cetera, et cetera. But he was an old school guy, old school medical doctor. And so he may not have been the picture of health himself, but he certainly made a very significant discovery about hydration.
Great. I think the idea that George Osawa said men should urinate maybe 3 or 4 times a day, women only 2 or 3. I don't know what his personal basis of that claim was, but as we all know, he lived into his early 70s.
71 or 72, and he died of a heart attack.
Maybe with a very adventurous life that was more quality than quantity, but we don't really know how he managed his health with.
I don't fault Osawa, and I don't fault Michio. I don't fault anybody. You know, these people are my heroes. These people lived an amazing life. They lived an adventure, a great adventure, and they brought to the world some very important information. So I don't feel anything but gratitude to George and Lima Osawa, to Michio and Aveline, to Shizuko, to all the Japanese macrobiotic teachers, and to all the American macrobiotic teachers, all the European, South American, you know, everybody who, you know, created this amazing macrobiotic movement of the 70s and 80s and 90s. You know, if I have a regret or a sense of, I guess I feel that the macrobiotic movement failed as a movement in this, I don't know what I was imagining back in the 70s or 80s, that we really would. I think individual macrobiotic people have made major impacts in health and healing in all, including in the world of functional medicine and functional nutrition. I know many of the most prominent functional medical doctors who received their training as allopaths at some point in their journey learned about macrobiotics and, you know, in their own way incorporated macrobiotics into their life and reflect some of that learning in their books and in their teaching. So I think we've had a big impact, but maybe the best is yet to come.
What could you say about your own health, since you started with certain health issues and anxiety and so forth? You're in the early 70s now, or how old?
I just turned 70 this year, back in March.
Congratulations.
So to be perfectly honest, am I perfectly healthy? No. I am. I definitely could be healthier than I am. I could definitely lose 20 pounds, maybe 25 pounds. So it's an interesting process. I say this. For about 15 years of my life, I followed a very strict macrobiotic approach, and I was not happy. I was not satisfied. I was symptom-free. I did not have the digestive system problems and disorder that brought me into macrobiotics, but I was very frustrated in my own level of health and my own level of vitality. And so I only experienced breakthroughs in my own health by going outside of, I guess, what I would consider orthodox macrobiotics and started experimenting more. And so I started by saying, because of that period of time where I was so strict, I so looked forward to a time in my life where I didn't have to be so strict. So I can say honestly that the last 25 years of my life, I've experienced a level of freedom and a level of dietary freedom / indulgence that I actually never thought I would be able to experience. And so I probably overdid it a little bit. And so now at age 70, I look ahead, and I'm seriously rethinking my own practice, and I definitely want to make changes, and I look forward to that. I would say maybe in conclusion, or I don't know where we're at with time, but one of my best students is my dad. My father actually introduced me to Oriental medicine before I discovered macrobiotics. My dad was reading a book in the early 70s about acupressure. I think the book was called Acupuncture Without Needles. And so as I learned all these things over the years, I would typically share them with my dad. And to his credit, he often would, integrate that new idea or that new habit or that new recipe, or in terms of the water cure, he started doing that. And my dad will turn 102 years old in September. And on his 100th birthday, I drove down to New Jersey where he lives, and we played golf. We played 9 holes of golf. So he's still very healthy. Mentally, he's still totally with it. He has some arthritis, and he has a little, he's 102. He's 101 and almost 102. But so he has some aging issues. But if you met him, if you talked to him, if you shook his hand, you'd say he was in his early 90s, but you would not think that he was over 100. So it can be done. We can live to a ripe old age. He's never had a serious illness. I mean, he's never had cancer, any type of cancer. He's never had a serious form of any degenerative condition. He has mild arthritis. He doesn't have any type of major arthritis. So he's been able to, he's had illnesses here and there, but he's always been able to fully recover, partly through my assistance and partly through
So genetics is a really positive quality in your heritage, in your lineage, and
well, I hope I got some of those genes, yes. But I believe what they teach in functional medicine, which is genetics plays maybe 5% to 10% of the equation. The other 90 to 95% is totally up to us in terms of the choices that we make. In fact, Dr. Mark Hyman, some of you may know of his work, in one of his early books says nutrition determines genetic expression. So that's interesting.
You didn't say much about physical activity. Some people have asked about that too.
Yeah, I didn't. And that's one of the areas that I need to improve on, for sure. Ask my wife. She'll say, if there's one area that I need to improve massively, now I do a lot of physical activity. I'm busy every day. I love to do carpentry work and stone work. I'm an amateur stonemason, so I keep myself very active. But I've played back and forth with Tai Chi, and I think that probably will be an activity that I will do a lot more of. So yes, physical activity. In fact, who was the scientist who discovered DNA? Watson and Crick.
Watson and Crick, yeah.
So James Watson, in the late 90s, was in his late 90s, and he came upon this, the science of redox signaling. And because redox signaling molecules were discovered by studying the heart function. And before he died, he said that the one way that we could increase production of redox signaling molecules without using any supplements, just through our own activity, was through exercise. Through exercise, the cells would start to produce more of these amazing redox signaling molecules. So that's interesting.
Clara agrees.
Absolutely.
I posted the link to your kind of basic meeting up or connection with you. Do you want to say anything about that? You offer, for those people who could, russellmariani.com is the website, but there's a link that I put in the chat about an initial visit with you. How does that work?
Yeah, so thank you, Lenny. So we offer everybody a free 30-minute, what we call first step conversation. You fill out a form, it's just very simple, 2-minute form, giving brief description of your symptoms and if there's a medical diagnosis. And then we get on the phone. Usually these days we get on Zoom and just talk for half an hour. to see if your set of symptoms and your condition is something that I have familiarity with, if something that I have already helped somebody else with similar symptoms and condition. And usually the answer to that question is yes. And then after that, the second step in the process is a little bit more formal consultation. We call the initial consultation. It's a 90-minute session on Zoom. And for that preparation, you fill out a 15-page form giving your complete medical history, all your symptoms, your diet, all your habits. It's very comprehensive. And then through that 90-minute session, I will explain to you what I think you should do, what I think based on my background, based on my understanding of functional medicine, functional nutrition, macrobiotics. I'm going to propose that we work together for a 6-month period, or in some cases, I'll just propose that you exercise mindfulness, do the water cure, and maybe try 1 or 2 supplements. So some people don't have to do a complete program, but if there is a complete program that makes sense to you and makes sense to me, then we'll do that. And it's a 6-month program. So that there's several options for people.
But that initial consultation is at no charge, just to find out if you're suitable and if they're willing, and just to get to know each other, right?
Correct. The first 30 minutes is free. And honestly, there have been many times when we come to the end of the 30 minutes and due to scheduling, I can't continue the conversation at that time. I have another call, but we'll schedule another free 30-minute session. So I'm very flexible, especially in the very beginning of the process with people. So if anything that I've said makes sense to you or resonates and you'd like to have a conversation, please feel free.
Yeah,
And
so
that
I put that link in the chat. And I'd like to hear also a little bit about you. I know you have some ongoing classes about the self-care guru, self-care sensei, but Manucha Ben David wanted to just say something briefly about her ongoing upcoming classes. They're based for maybe anybody, but certainly Jewish people who are interested in some aspect of integration with Judaism and macrobiotics. Manucha, could you just, I don't know whether you could post something in the chat, how people can stay in touch with you? She is,
I'll do
oh, there
that.
she is.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you
I-
could
I
post in
just-
the chat, but it
Yeah.
only take a minute or so right now.
Sure. Can I just share one thing that George Osawa said, which is the basis of my course?
Okay.
Okay. Can you see it now or?
Yep.
Okay. All human knowledge is criminal in nature if it does not have as its object of the infinite, eternal, and absolute reality, namely God. For me, God is the unique principle, the absolute, infinite, and eternal world. If you truly understand this, and if you follow the principles of macrobiotics, then you will always be happy and healthy and free from all fear. This is the great adventure of life. The infinite God created this finite world. The story of Genesis is not a myth born over the course of millions of years, but a living reality at this very moment, each day, each hour, each minute, and each second. And
Great. So you're going to be teaching this. So if you could just put the link to how they can get in touch with you, that would be
Yes.
great.
Thank you, Lenny. Thank you. And
Okay.
thank you. Yeah, thank you, Russell, for your information as well.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. That's beautiful. I agree.
Russell, could you just say something about your ongoing, your class that you're doing, or is it all available on your website? How would ongoing studies?
Yeah, so because my area of expertise is digestive wellness, we typically do a monthly webinar via Zoom called The Gut Rules. And it's usually about an hour long. I'll present for about 20 minutes and then it's open Q&A. So that's available. And a couple of years ago, one of my clients who had already had a hip replacement and then found me. And over the next year, we were able to restore, get rid of his osteoarthritis, and he did not need the other hip replacement surgery. In one of our conversations, he referred to me as his self-care sensei. And I had never heard that expression before. And I recognized immediately that this is the essence of the work that I do. Not to be the sensei for others, although obviously in the beginning, I want to serve that function. But the nature of my work is, and I always believe this about macrobiotics, is that the nature of the work is to awaken the self-care sensei inside each one of us. And what I believe is that that wisdom, that guide is inside of us, inside every cell of our body. And our job is to create relationship with that inner wisdom, with that ultimate wisdom, if you will. And so the purpose of all of the changes, habits, practices, hydration, whatever we're doing for our health, the ultimate purpose of all those things is to awaken our own inner self-care sensei. So that's the title of my next book, Self-Care Sensei. And I'm excited about it, and I still have a ways to go, but that's the project.
That's great. That's great. Any other questions from anybody? Oh, the name of the supplement. What is somebody asked the name of one of the supplements.
The redox signaling supplement?
Maybe that's what it is, redox signaling. And please do write to Russell with any other questions.
Yeah, if you're interested in learning about any of the particular things, just reach out to me directly, and that would be great.
And you can look up the redox signaling online. You can find anything about it. And if you want to buy it through Russell's connection.
Or if you just want to learn more about it, there's a lot to learn. And I always encourage people to learn about it first. I mean, I was first introduced to it back in 2014, and I had never heard those words, redox signaling. It took me an entire month before I felt comfortable enough to make a purchase. So I encourage everyone to learn about it first.
And how long did it take before you felt something as a result of it?
Almost 2 full months. I didn't feel anything the first 30 days, and I wasn't sure at all through the next 30 days. But into the 3rd month, I did have some pretty significant changes and improvements that nothing else that I ever tried had facilitated. So it is a significant tool in the toolbox.
Great. Well, thank you, Russell. We appreciate your expertise, your insights, your experience. And I'm sorry for the confusion about our link in today's session. Glad that we all who are here were able to find us. There will be a recording of this session available through YouTube, the Whole Health channel. And next month, I'm just going to give a short preview. Next month, we're going to be doing an introduction to a project that I've been involved with a number of other longtime macrobiotic teachers, practitioners, who have been looking at ways to reach the next phase of macrobiotic evolution. And so we're going to be introducing through a panel discussion a transformed and evolved view, as Russell has done from his experience. We've also been working on, not necessarily with the same level of detailed prescription, but much more of an ideology and a process and a practice that is integrating what we've all learned over the last 50, 60, 70 years of practicing and studying macrobotics. I'll send out information about that over the next few weeks, and it'll be September 6th, that first Sunday in September. Again, thank you, Russell. Thanks for everybody who joined. And
Thank you, Lenny. Thank you
Yeah.
very much for the opportunity. Thank you, everybody.
Great. Okay. Until next month.